Good evening. Today is Wednesday, July the 15th, 2026. And we are joined by producer Paulie tonight, and otherwise known as Paul Harriet. And to talk about, the Blue Jays, 570 News shutting down. This has been a popular topic on the show. Paul, thank you so much for coming in. You know something? I always remember something now when Now, I've got some sound effects here, but I always remember when you produced the Farwell show?
Absolutely, I do.
And you would always throw in the sound effects.
Yes, I always like those, yes.
So kind of something like this.
Sound effects there, then? Oh, there we go. Applause.
Yeah.
A smattering of applause, yes.
Yeah, some of them I thought were pretty funny, but yeah, but
I really like.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I really liked. I liked playing those sound effects on Mike Farwell's show, and he liked them too. They're in broadcasting. They're what's called pattern disruptors. So if you're just listening to the radio and someone's just talking and talking and talking, but then you hear something that's a little out of place, like a sound effect, that grabs your attention back into the show. So yeah, I like some of those sound effects for sure. They were a lot of fun.
Yes, and but you know what I liked though? I liked that you knew when the right time was to do those, because there was a time when that wouldn't have been appropriate to do, like during interviews, and I think and I felt you kind of recognized when to do it.
Oh, of course. Yeah, there's a time and a place. Like if you're doing a serious interview, you're not going to throw in a Simpsons clip or something like that. I would always save that stuff for, when we were doing some lighter stuff, the opening of the show, or, when we were just, goofing off or taking calls, what's a movie you've seen more than 10 times, that sort of a thing. Never during a serious interview. Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, that was fun. And you remember those days he always began the show, which I don't know why it changed over the years, but he always began with Working Man by Rush.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge Rush fan myself, but I mean, that song set the tone for the show, and I don't know exactly what happened. I at one point, I don't know what the thinking was behind this, but at one point, upper management didn't want a permanent theme song for the show, and I guess they wanted him to mix it up or whatever, which to me, I mean, every great show has a theme song. Like imagine if The Simpsons or Seinfeld or something had a different theme song every week. Well, it's like when you hear the song, the show is on. So yeah, for some reason they wanted him to change it, and I didn't care what the song would have been, but it would be nice to hear something consistent. But yeah, I don't know if that was Mike's decision, but I don't know the reasoning behind why they changed that, but I missed it for sure.
Oh yeah, I did too. So when you found, before we sort of talk about it shut down, it did go through some recent periods of some adjustments, as generally always happens when there are program director changes, upper management changes, etc. But when they changed back, they changed it to City News before you left.
Right.
Then
in the fall of 2021, I believe.
Yes, and then they went back, or not back to, but then they went to 570 News again, but in the brand of 570 News Radio.
That's right. They added the word radio on it, but it was essentially kind of, I remember hearing it. I'm like, well, after 2.5 years of the City News thing, they essentially went back to the old name.
What were your thoughts there?
Well, so in the fall of 2021, they changed, the station was called 570 News, and they decided to change the name to City News 570. Now, this was a whole Rogers-wide initiative where they wanted all of their news stations to take on the city news branding to kind of combine with the city news brand and the website and to kind of make like a general news entity. And I didn't think the strategy was all that bad. Kind of moving forward, because we're not, we just weren't a radio station anymore. That was the thinking. But then when they changed the name back, or basically, they dropped the city news branding on the radio side, but chose to keep it for the website. I thought that was an interesting move because they weren't mentioning city news on the radio, but they were still saying go to the city news website for stories. And then the social media was all weird, like the social, the Twitter account was city news KIT, city news Kitchener, and then the traffic, I can't even remember what the traffic handle was, but it didn't make any sense. So when they dropped the city news on the radio side, I figured, okay, something that they don't have confidence in kind of what role radio might play going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just, kind of waiting to figure something out. So I thought that move was a little curious. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of didn't sit. That was interesting to me in a way. Like, I think if they were going to change it back, I think they could have just changed the whole branding back.
Back to 570 News?
Yes.
Well, I mean, obviously I wasn't in the room for that decision, but I mean, the logo was different the second time around. The color scheme was different. Like for years, I don't know how much they mentioned it on the air, but internally, all of those news stations were known as the Green brand because they all had a green similar logo, right? 570 News, City News. Mm-hmm. And when they changed it back to city, for what is it? 570 News Radio, they used a black and red color scheme, and I guess black and red is supposed to, I guess that's supposed to be like the colors that people see when they trust news. Maybe that was the reason for it. So the name was kind of the same. I'm personally not a fan of using the word radio on the radio, but that's just me. No, I just would have moved back to 570 News, but that's just me.
And when you found out about the shutdown, and of course, as we did talk about off air, that it wasn't that it wasn't surprising, but what went through your mind? Like, if you look at what's been going on with radio station closures, you saw Bell and Chorus did it. Was it all that surprising to you that they did it? In the not like the way that they did it, yes, by closing 6 of them down at once, but are you surprised in particular with how that they shut 570 News down?
Yeah, I was. Like, am I surprised? Yes and no. I mean, I guess I kind of relate it to, a friend or a family member who's in ailing health, and they don't have a lot of time left, but it still is sad and shocking when that sort of thing happens. So it was a surprise in that sense because, I mean, I'm sitting at work last Tuesday at my desk, and my best friend of 30 years texts me, and he worked in radio for a while too, so he's interested. And he says, dude, what's going on at 570? It's gone. And I'm like, what? Get out. And so I went to my car, and surely enough, it wasn't there. Now the signal was on, like what they call a carrier signal was on, but they weren't broadcasting any audio. And then a couple of hours later, even that disappeared. But so it didn't surprise me. I kind of figured something like this could happen. I mean, we've seen Bell and Chorus make similar moves in the last couple of years, selling stations, or in some cases, literally shutting stations down, like AM 900 in Hamilton, which I know you've talked a lot about on your show. Things start out as, a normal day, what you think is going to be a normal day. And then, HR shows up and hands everybody a pink envelope and pulls the plug. And And it's I mean, that's not quite literally, I'm sure, how it happened. I'm sure it was the engineering department that pulled the plug, but it's, you get my point. So yeah, was I expecting it? Yes. But did I think Rogers was going to shut down 6 radio stations all at once the way they did? Absolutely not. I think even when Chorus shut down CHML, I think that was the only station they did that day. I think maybe there was another one, maybe, but 6 in one day certainly seems a lot. And I was thinking, I don't, could they, maybe they could have sold a couple of them. Like, okay, maybe a couple of them could have been shut down, maybe, but I don't know. Maybe some of them could have been sold to somebody, like that 1130 signal in Vancouver was decent. Even the 570 signal here in Waterloo region, I mean, that was really kind of the main source of radio news between Toronto and London. Especially now that AM 900 had been shut down. And then that signal out in Halifax, that was actually an FM signal. And some people might think, well, couldn't they just convert that to music? But there are regulations in Canada about doing talk on FM. You need a specific AM. You can do whatever you want, but on FM, you need a specific license. So it just couldn't have switched it to music, because that would have violated the information talk license that they had promised. So yeah, I'm very shocked at just the way they did it. I'd like to, if it's okay,
go ahead.
Take a few minutes here and go through kind of the history of 570.
Let's do it.
How we got here. I mean, they've been on the air since 1949, but for the purposes of this conversation, we should start at 1997, when they launched as a talk station, and Rogers owned it. They'd owned it, I think, since the mid 90s. So 95 maybe or so, they took it over. But they changed it to a talk format in 1997. I don't know if you've been in the area this long, Ali.
Yes,
whatever, but
I used to listen to it back then too.
Yeah. So 570 CKGL, Kitchener's information superstation.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And they put a lot of money into that, and it sounded great. They brought in people both on the air and off the air who were, who knew what they were doing. And they put a lot of money into, launching that station. And it sounded pretty good initially. Then they changed the name to News Talk 570. And then I guess around 2003, they changed the name to 570 News, which to me at the time didn't make sense, because, that to me says they're an all news station, but they were a talk station, but they were doing it to kind of be consistent with their, their sister station in Toronto. So by about that time, 2003, 2004, the ratings had slipped a little bit. The quality of the on-air product had slipped a bit. So they decided to bring in Don Collins, program director from, I think he was in Regina before he moved to Kitchener. And he turned the station around, did a great job. They gave him the budget to do everything he wanted to do. And, the station did quite well while he was there, turned the station around. In fact, he did such a good job at it that in 2010, Rogers moved him to Sportsnet, or I guess, the Fan 590, as it was called at the time in Toronto, to kind of change up that station a bit, whose programming had become a little bit, boring and predictable at that time. And he changed the Fan around. So 2010, they bring in Pete Travers, and Pete Travers did a great job as well. Pete was big on like podcasting, for instance. He wanted to make sure that all of the shows were available as a podcast and an archive on the website. So he was very forward thinking in that sense, and did a decent job at keeping the radio station relevant. Budgets were starting to, I think, to slip a little bit at that point. But again, Pete did a decent job with, what he was able to do. And I think one of the reasons that 570 did so well in that time frame was because of the sporting events that they would carry. They would carry the Rangers, the Leafs, the Blue Jays, NFL football, the World Junior Hockey Championships around Christmas. And so they carried a lot of sporting events. And
sometimes the Raptors too.
Occasionally the Raptors, if they were able to, fit in a broadcast in between, if they had an open night or whatever. And that was an interesting strategy in terms of selling commercials, because The way commercials are sold on radio is the your biggest listenership is between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. That's when you make all your money with the commercials you're selling. A lot of the commercials that you hear on radio on evenings and weekends are sold at a reduced rate, or in
Okay.
some cases, like PSAs, so they would have no value at all. But with all these sporting events that 570 was carrying, when do these sporting events happen? Evenings and weekends. So it was a way of getting paid commercials on the air at a time when the commercials would be maybe even given away for free, because 570 had the sports package that they would sell to advertisers and said, if you want to reach sports fans, we will put together a package for you, and your commercial will be all over all of the sports games. And people tune in specifically to hear the Jays and the Rangers and all of that. So I think that led a lot to 570's success over the years. So anyway, fast forward to 2021, and they switched to City News, as we talked about. And the thinking behind that was, we're not just a radio station anymore. We're a multimedia entity. We're social media. We're a website. Of course, we're a radio station. And I think the idea was, too, that maybe they would add some video on the website, have reporters shoot some video when they went out to cover stuff. But then the pandemic happened, and that part never really materialized. But that was the thinking behind it, to kind of digitize everything. And radio, of course, was part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think it was a decent strategy at the time, to kind of push people towards the website and try to generate a little bit of revenue through the website, when ads come up and stuff like that. But then 2.5 years later, they changed the name back to 570 News Radio. And again, as we discussed, it seemed that they didn't know if radio was really going to fit into the whole City News thing, because they still retained the City News stuff for the website. And from there, in my opinion, the product of what you were hearing on the air was slipping a little bit. They didn't seem to have someone who was paying attention to what they say in radio as what's coming out of the box. So in other words, and that's kind of an old term when people had physical radios, but what is the end listener hearing? Are they hearing something, are people talking all over each other? Are things too loud? Like, just the actual, like, what you're hearing when you turn on the radio. Is it something that you desire to listen to? And, I kept hearing, a lot of interviews over Zoom, which are a pet peeve of mine. I mean, if you have a decent microphone, you're fine. But like, there was one show on that station that was done entirely over Zoom, and I don't know what microphones they were using, whether it was a cheap gaming headset or a laptop microphone, but the quality of what you heard on the AM side was not good. Streaming was okay, but AM, of course, you're already dealing with reduced sound quality. So to not use the absolute best microphones that you can is not good. And then just programming things, I think, would slip too. Like when Mike Farwell would go away on vacation, instead of getting a fill-in host like Larry Fedoruk or somebody, they would just throw on a rerun. And it would sometimes be the same rerun that we heard the day before.
But didn't they have Larry in most of the time?
Beg your pardon?
Didn't they have Larry Fedoruk in most of the time, though?
They did for a while, but just like over the last at least 6 months, particularly when Mike was off, doing the Rangers games with, the Memorial Cup and stuff. There was a lot of times over the last 6 months that I heard the same Farwell repeat 3 days in a row. When, like, they should have at least have something live on the air. And if you are going to do a repeat, try to pull stuff from a few months ago that's not dated, just some of that fun light stuff. But it's not good to have literally the exact same programming in the same day. Like if you listen to a radio station and they play the same song at the same time as yesterday, and listeners notice that stuff, it's kind of like that. And then even the sign outside the building. The sign outside the building still, right up until the end, said City News 570. They never actually changed the sign.
Mm-hmm.
So the product of what was being heard on the air and, paying attention to the station seemed to slip over the last couple of years. And then about 3 months ago, Rogers offered buyout packages to a number of their employees, and the number that I had heard was 50%. They had offered buyout packages to 50% of their entire workforce across all departments. And when I heard that, I'm like, oh boy, they are really looking to cut costs. And I actually wondered at that point, I seriously, for the first time, actually said to myself, is 570 going to be on the air at the end of the year? And we now know the answer. So that's kind of the history of 570. It started out really strong, dipped a bit, came back up, and then they slowly cut the budget year over year over year. And that's where we are today.
But I don't know if I know you were a listener, but do you remember then a few years ago when now you might remember City News Ottawa shut down. That was the first one to shut down.
Yeah, I can't remember. When was that? I might even have still been there at the time. I was there when they moved it to FM, but I don't think I was still working for Rogers when they actually took it off the air.
I don't think so. I don't think so. And then when, I think it was in 2023, October 2023, somewhere in there, November. Maybe we have to do some Googling.
Time, but they had their AM talk station in Ottawa, and they decided to put it on FM to try and get more listenership. And then they eventually flipped the FM back to a country format, which it was before, and then just turned the AM off. Yeah, I think that 2023 sounds about right. I think it might have been late 2023.
And then what I have to say, I wasn't a fan. Do you remember then they said, okay, now we're going to give Rob Snow the Stubot, but we're going to syndicate him on pretty much all of those news stations that shut down.
That's right, yeah, because Rob Snow was doing a local talk show in Ottawa.
Yeah, mid-mornings.
They decided to kind of, give him kind of a syndicated show among the different Rogers radio stations. And I mean, he was okay. The thing I didn't like, it wasn't necessarily him, but was what was called his clock, right? Which is the placement of the commercial break. So because he was on 570 in Kitchener, he was on the Halifax station, but he was also on in Calgary and even Vancouver at one point, although Vancouver dropped the show maybe a couple of years ago. But those stations in Calgary and Vancouver were all news stations. So they changed Rob's commercial load so that those commercials would fall on the ones, as it were, so that Calgary and Vancouver could slip in a traffic report. But when you have commercial breaks that often, it ruins the flow of a talk show. And there were a lot of times when Rob was talking to a caller or something, and you'd hear that music creep in, and oh yeah, sorry, we got to go. So I didn't like the commercial structure. And Mike Farwell locally had that commercial structure for a while, and they changed it in September, and the show became so much better when he was able to talk and take calls for 15 or even 20 minutes at a time. So I'm glad they made that change with the Mike Farwell show, but I guess they couldn't do it with Rob. So So with Rob, the show didn't flow very well.
Yes. Now, do you remember when they first started his show? It started out 1 to 4.
Yeah, I think the time slot did change a couple of times, but I think there was also at one point 570 was not picking up that first hour. They would only pick up the last 2 hours, the talk back. So I don't know if the time slot changed or just the hours at 570 decided to pick up change. But yeah, it was 1 to 4 when it started. Is that right? You know better than I do. I don't remember that.
No, so here's what I mean. So it started out 1 to 4, and then which was back in, I think, September of October of 2023, right? A little bit, or maybe it was actually at the end actually it was when the Ottawa station shut down. So a few weeks later, so then it started out 1-4. And then 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, 570 News was like, okay, we're pivoting back. So then, I don't know if they realized it was a mistake, because then at 3 o'clock, in the 3 o'clock hour, they brought all news afternoons back.
Right. So
I don't know, what do you think?
Would have been on from 3 to 4, but not in Kitchener.
Yes. So what do you think, on pure speculation, that the reasoning could have, do you think that it may have sort of costed them in a way? Because why would they change it back so fast?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because you're dealing with, you're dealing with the station in Halifax and you're dealing with the station in Vancouver, which, what is that, a 4-hour time difference? So I guess you kind of had to pick a time that worked for everybody involved. So in Vancouver, he would have been on from like 10 till 1, I guess. Right. So I guess maybe that has something to do with it. But in terms of, why they changed, I don't know. Maybe it was just to have him be on as many radio stations for as much time as possible. Because you're right. At 3 o'clock, 570 wants to start its afternoon news run. Right. People are driving home at that point. They want the traffic and the weather and all that. So maybe that was the reason.
Yeah, because generally things like that wouldn't change, so they would give it a little bit of time to sort of see how it would fit. But this was really like a complete pivot move.
Yeah, I can't remember how long he was on, 1 to 4 versus, because I guess over the last couple of years he was noon to 3, but Farwell went to 1, so they would only pick up the second 2 hours of the show.
Right. Okay, that's what happened. Okay.
Right, because the first hour of the show, he would usually do interviews and stuff like that, and the last 2 were just phone-ins. And it took me a while to figure that out, because I'm like, I seem to recall when Rob Snow started, he did a bit of interviews and a bit of phone calls, but now all I hear is phone calls. But then I realized that's because that's the only portion of the show 570 decided to air. They didn't air that first hour with the interview. So it's not that Rob made a shift in what he was doing. It was a shift in what hours he was heard in Kitchener.
Yeah, and you know what I realized that? You know what I realized something like, because see, then what happened is I said, let me check out the podcast version to see how it sounds. And it sounded much different than what I was hearing on 570 News.
Right, yeah, because you're missing that first hour.
Right, yes.
Right, when you're listening live on the air. But the podcast version would have all 3 hours. You can listen to the whole thing.
And I'm thinking that he's gone too, as part of that shutdown.
That would be my guess, but I mean, I don't know for sure. But I mean, there's all of the stations he was on are no longer on. So, I mean, it's perhaps, and it's, my understanding is that when they let some people go last week, some people were retained to write content for the website. Like when it comes to the 570 website this week, I've seen Christine Clark's name coming up as writing articles, Aaron Anderson, even Matt Hutchison, who was their afternoon reporter, had some stories up on the weekend. So some people were retained to do stuff for the website. Maybe Rob is writing for the Ottawa website. I don't know.
Now, what does this sort of like now? Now 570 News had the Blue Jays rights. Now, of course, that's in house.
Right. Yeah, it's all produced by Rogers, your same parent company.
Yes. But do you see this being somehow bringing them back on the airwaves here in the region? I personally don't think it will happen, because you can stream it on the Sportsnet 590 The Fan audio stream.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see the Blue Jays or the Leafs games air in Kitchener again. Because every other station that's left is a music station, and that's their primary, programming. The Rangers could be a different thing, and I know we're going to talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, let's get into that.
But Blue Jays and Leafs, but the thing is, but you're right. With the Blue Jays and the Leafs, you can listen to that online. Now, some people don't know this, but like for many years, you couldn't listen to Major League Baseball games online. Any station that broadcast the game had to block out their online version or put alternate programming on.
Yeah, you had to have the MLB subscription.
That MLB or Sirius XM has all the games, but again, you're paying for that. And I don't know if it was exclusively something that Rogers agreed to with the Blue Jays or whether all teams are allowed to do this, but the state, at least for the Blue Jays, the fan in Toronto does not have to block their feed during Blue Jay games. So if you pull up Sportsnet 590 on whatever app you're listening to.
Hey, you know what? My favorite is Simple Radio.
Yeah. You use that app as well. Eh?
Yes.
That is my favorite app. Okay.
And I think you were the one that told me about it.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah, you were the one that told me about it.
It's again, it leads up to the name Simple Radio. There's not a lot of clutter. It's it's just basic things. But the thing with the different radio apps and stuff lately is like every company has its own app, right? Bell's stations are on iHeart and Rogers stations were on the Seeker app.
Yeah, I don't like the Seeker app.
Right. It's okay, but again, it was only Rogers content. So
yeah,
if I, but so and then TuneIn, which was a great app, just ads just pop in randomly, and I found that annoying. If you want to roll a couple of ads before I start listening, I'm okay with that. But like in the middle of a song or the middle of a Blue Jay game or something, an ad would just randomly pop up on TuneIn. So yeah, I use the Simple Radio app because everybody is on there. It doesn't matter who owns what station. Stuff from Bell, stuff from Chorus, stuff from Rogers,
Evanov,
independent stations, they're all on there. So I only need one app. So
yep.
Yeah, if I'm the one who told you about it, you're welcome.
Yes, and I appreciate that. Yes. Yeah. And I told some other people about it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Simple Radio, it's called. They don't have podcasts or anything, but if you like just normal radio, it's a great app. Simple Radio.
Yeah, and I like that because it doesn't have clutter in it.
That's right. Yeah, you have your favorite. My only beef with the app is when I use it in the car, because you have your favorites tab and then you have your most recent listened to tab.
Right.
When I hook it up in my car, it always defaults to the most recent listened. I wish it could default to my favorites or my presets. I have to manually click that button, but it would be nice if that was the default. But anyway, I've seen other people online suggest that happened, but they haven't changed the algorithm or the programming code for the app or anything. But it's a minor inconvenience. It's a great app.
Yep. Yeah. So the Rangers rights, what do you think might happen there? Do you? I hope there'll be an online component.
Oh yeah, of course I do too. And that was, obviously outside of, when I first heard the news, it's like, oh my, it's the station's no longer on. So many people are out of jobs and stuff. But then I'm like, I wonder what happens with the Rangers broadcast, because the Kitchener Rangers of the OHL had been on 570 for years. And the Rangers, for those who might not be aware, just won the Memorial Cup.
Yep.
So that's the Stanley Cup of junior hockey in Canada. They're the best junior hockey team in all of Canada. So it's a big deal. And for the games to maybe not be on the radio next season is almost unthinkable. Like this is the height of the team's success, and then their games won't be on the radio anymore. It was weird. And it's interesting because so whatever it was, like, the contract that the Rangers had would have been with 570 specifically, but now that 570 is not on the air anymore, that presumably that contract would no longer exist. So the Rangers would be free to kind of do whatever they want. And maybe you saw this last week. The Rangers put out a statement.
They did, yeah.
We thank 570 News, and we're looking at all possible, options for broadcast next year. There are a lot of teams who now do games only online. The Owen Sound Attack,
the Brantford Bulldogs,
and the Hamilton Ticats of the CFL all produce their own broadcast. The Ticats have a great app. There's interviews on there, articles. They have a podcast that comes out a couple of times a week, and you can listen to the games live right on the app. Now, there is a radio station in Hamilton that does broadcast the Ticats, but they simply just plug in the app and air what the the Ticats audio feed. That's probably in the contract. They probably can't even air any of their own commercials or anything, but at least they're on the radio. So I think the most likely scenario, and I'm just guessing, but the most likely scenario is I think Rogers will at least attempt to retain the rights. They'll show interest in retaining the rights and put them possibly on Country 106.7, their FM station. They will not put them on Chime. Anybody who's wondering about that, they will not put them on Chime. Chime is a juggernaut. It brings in a lot of money. They're not going to, toy with the programming in any way, shape, or form. So if Rogers does retain the rights, you would see them on Country 106.7. I know I've been talking to a few different people in the local radio, market, and I can't say a lot, but what I will say, it is my understanding is there's been quite a bit of interest among a few area broadcasters about broadcasting Rangers games. There more than one station has approached the Rangers to say, hey, we're interested. So I would be shocked if you don't hear the Rangers on the radio somewhere next season. What station it's going to be, I have no idea. So, but I think you will definitely hear them on the radio. Will they produce them themselves, or will they just pick up the Rangers feed? I don't even think the Rangers know that at this point, because I think they're figuring out what route they want to go. But the games, I can guarantee, will be on the radio somewhere next season.
But for someone like me that doesn't have a radio, I want to still be able to listen to the games. But there has to be an online component.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then all of these radio stations, of course, they stream online, right? Like when I would listen to the Rangers online, I would just pull up the 570 app or whatever and listen that way.
And simple radio.
That could be an option too. So whether you listen through the Rangers app or through whatever radio station would pick it up, you'll be able to listen to them online for sure.
I can see CKWR as a possible option too.
Yeah, I know that one has come up. The thing with CKWR is like their evening and weekend programming is all done by volunteers, and there's some multicultural stuff. And I wonder if some of those programmers who maybe might not like sports at all might not like that their show is being preempted by a hockey game, every Friday night or whatever. So I'm sure some people would be okay with that. It would be great for the listeners because they have a decent signal. But I think some of the program hosts are going to raise a big stink if that happens. But who knows? Your guess is as good as any. Exactly. I know CKWR's name has come up a couple times.
But there aren't many options for them to go in the region though, in terms of the on-air product. Like, who do we have here? We have Bounce.
Yeah,
Virgin.
Bounce. Yeah, Virgin. They're both owned by Virgin. Has a huge signal, but I don't see the audiences lining up. Bounce perhaps, but their signal isn't the best.
No.
Beg your pardon?
No, it's certainly not.
No. Again, Country 106.7, that's a possibility. Dave FM, which is a rock station, could be an interesting fit. I think, at least with the Ticats in Hamilton, their games are on a rock station, and so I think there's a lot of crossover there between football fans and rock music fans, and I think that might be a little similar for the Rangers. So it might be of interest. If Dave FM were interested, their audience might line up a little bit to do that. So that's possible.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, it could happen. So,
but think. Go ahead.
Then you have the station at Conestoga College as well, which maybe you can get some students involved in the broadcast. So there's a lot of stations that could air the games, and a couple that actually seem like they actually might be realistic options.
Yeah, but now here's what I'm kind of hoping, or what I kind of see happen. Like, I shouldn't say this, but I'm gonna say it as an option here, that I'd like to see the Rangers perhaps approach Farwell and say, if you want it, you can do the games.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, whenever they're like, whoever is in charge of the broadcasts, you need a play-by-play guy. And for me, Farwell would be the first phone call I would make. Hey, are you interested? So, we'll see. I mean, Mike, obviously, I mean, I've been chatting with him a little bit over the last, week or so, and he's upset that he can't do the show anymore, and he was as shocked as anybody, when this news came down last Tuesday, and he put up a poll on the Mike Farwell Show Facebook page the other day, kind of, gauging people's, how do you listen? How did you listen to the show on the radio? Did you watch on TV? So to me, that says he's kind of looking at different options, whether it's a podcast or whatever. So Mike, I'm sure, would want to get back on the air in some way if possible. So, and maybe the Kitchener Rangers are part of that. Maybe he ends up at a station that also does the Rangers games, because Mike has done music radio before.
Yep.
Him and I used to work together when he did the morning show at Country 106.7. So he can announce songs just like he can talk, do an interview on a talk show. So he's a very versatile guy. So, whatever station might pick up the Rangers, maybe you should pick up Farwell too.
Yeah.
Could happen. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know, right? And I mean, that's like, yeah, I can see him. I can see him maybe doing a podcast too.
Yeah, and I've been talking to him. I said, a podcast might be a decent idea. It's relatively inexpensive to get set up. Your Facebook page has close to 5,000 people on it, so you could promote your podcast episodes on there. So I think that would be a decent a decent road to go if you wanted to do that. I mean, we've seen other radio people take on podcasts. I mean, the Sid Sixero show. I don't know how many people are listening or watching to him, but he's out there doing it every day after he was let go from City TV.
He does a good job there.
So, yeah, he is. He's not bad. I don't mind him. And
Dan Riccio and the off the roster, Dan Riccio, Lindsey Dunn, and Cabby are doing their thing.
Yeah, I don't listen to those ones, but I've listened and watched Sid a little bit. I remember on
YouTube.
On YouTube, and then the whole shiny jacket guy who's been sitting behind some Blue Jay games this year, who's annoying different fans. I don't even pay attention. I don't even notice him half the time because I'm watching the game. But I remember Sid Sixero went on a rant about the shiny jacket guy, and then the shiny jacket guy emailed him and said, "Come do a game with me sometime, and you'll see that I'm not such a bad guy." And then Sid did a whole bit about it on a show. That was interesting.
Yeah, he's good, and I did sort of clue in that Alex Sixero. Do you remember Alex Sixero, his brother?
So I'm thinking of, did I say Alex? I meant Sid.
No, you did say Sid, but do you remember Alex Sixero?
Yeah, were they brothers? I did not know that.
I didn't know that either. I think they're brothers. I don't know, but
I don't know. I mean, it's not a common last name, so I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, you have Dan Shulman and Ben Shulman both working for Roger, so maybe.
Yep. Yeah, well, Alex is still doing afternoon sports at 680 News.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know if they're related or not. I got to look that up now. You've intrigued my interest.
Why not? Yeah, Sid Sixero's good. I like I think he gets a little loud at times, but he's good.
But that's what you want, though, right? You don't want, I like someone who kind of, isn't afraid to, give their opinion, So yeah, I don't mind him.
Yeah. No, so you kind of like the Jerry Agar style too.
Yeah, I mean, just don't sit there and interview people. Give your opinion on stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about filling airtime. It's about entertaining people. So entertain me.
Yeah. But I think too, where this all kind of, and I mean, then you've got now the Blue Jays. That's been an interesting season, hasn't it?
Yeah, I guess they haven't met expectations. Of course, they were in the World Series last year. And, I was hoping that, the beginning of this season, they got off to a slow start like they did last season. And all of a sudden in June, they just turned everything on and they never looked back. But it seems that the kind of mediocre hitting is continuing. Although it's funny because Guerrero Jr. had 2 home runs, I think, in the last series there in San Diego. And I said to my son about a week ago, I said, I don't know what it is, but I have a feeling Guerrero is about to break out. And he's hit 2 home runs in the last 3 games. So maybe I remember that story that came out a couple of weeks ago that I guess it was revealed. I think maybe Guerrero mentioned during an interview that he does 300 practice swings in the batting cage before every game. I'm like, well, that's the problem. You're tiring yourself out by the time the game begins. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe if Guerrero picks it up. I mean, the whole American League this year is quite weak, with the exception of a couple of teams. It really anybody could sneak into the playoffs. I think the Jays are really only 2 or 3 games out of a playoff spot even now. So it'll only take, maybe a 5 or a 6 game winning streak and they're right back in it. But I've been disappointed by it, but we'll see what happens in the second half. Okamoto was my favorite player. And I love this guy. He got off to a slow start, but I really like this guy. 22 home runs already.
Do you feel that this kind of had to do with the slump had to do with Bichette leaving?
With what?
With Bichette leaving?
I don't think so. I mean, I know Bo Bichette and Guerrero were close friends, but I wouldn't think so. I mean, I think Guerrero's had a stiff back too, but I don't know. I mean, what do you think about? But do you think, because Bichette in New York has said that he's thinking about opting out of his contract at the end of the season, and people are speculating maybe he might come back. What do you think?
I think I'd like to see him come back, but I don't know if depending on who where he wants to be.
That's right. And then of course you have to make room on the roster for him too, right? Where would you put him? Third base, second base? I mean, I'd be able to take my Bichette t-shirt out of retirement. I had a Bichette t-shirt that I would wear, and I haven't been able to wear it. So I think it would be cool for some reason, because he's picked it up in New York over the last month or so. I have a feeling Bo is going to stay in New York for the next 2 years and finish out that 3-year contract. That's just my guess, but of course it would be cool to see him back in a Jays uniform. Just please, Bo, please don't sign with the Yankees. Whatever you do, anybody but the Yankees, thank you.
It's pretty much almost the same team as last year, with the exception of they just got Okamoto and Cease and Rogers and some of the other small additions they made.
Well, I mean, no team is exactly the same, year over year, right?
No.
But yeah, you're right. Varsho, Springer, and Kirk are there, but all of them are kind of not meeting expectations either.
No.
So I don't know, where do you go from here? The trade deadline is coming up. Are the Jays going to be buyers or sellers? I don't know. I mean, I don't see them being sellers for sure. I don't see them, trading away all these, these guys who are pretty good. Are they going to try to acquire a few people? Maybe. They're not going to be sellers. I think they're actually going to, I think they just kind of might stay the course and hope that what they have works out. That's my prediction.
That's a possibility.
Yeah.
I see that happening. I really see it. I really do see that happening. And then, do you see Springer coming back long term?
Long term, I don't know when his current contract ends, but I have a feeling he could retire pretty soon. I think he's slowing down a little bit, just like oh man, what is that pitcher's name? I can't remember his name now. Max Scherzer.
Oh, Scherzer, yes.
Yeah, he has not kind of been historically good this year. He's been injured a lot of the time, and when he has played, he hasn't been great. But I think he's had a great career. I think he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think it might be time to hang up the glove. So,
yeah,
that's that.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm looking for. And did you like the All Star game?
Yeah, it was okay. I watched some of it. I always enjoy watching the player introductions. I don't know. I always like that part. I think what four Blue Jays this year, and Dylan Cease pitched the first inning and three up, three down, so that was good to see. I watched the home run derby, or at least some of it. I really like the format that they kind of gone back to the old format, because the last few years they had the timer, and
Mm-hmm.
part of the home run derby, it's fun to watch the balls go over the fence and admire the distance, but they were with the timer, they were throwing the next pitch while the previous ball was still in the air. I really did enjoy the format this year. There was no rush. I think what you had 20 swings. It was similar to the way it used to be, where you had a certain number of quote outs. I think maybe it was 10 outs. Anything that wasn't a home run was an out. But no, I really enjoyed the home run derby in the format this year. I hope they keep it.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to listening in to the season. The second half begins Friday, and the Jays
Yes,
are back at
they are.
home.
Yeah, they're home. Is it against the White Sox?
Yeah,
Yeah. So hopefully everybody gets rested up. Vladimir Guerrero was voted to the All Star game, but declined to participate. Just which I think was I think that was the right move. Even though the fans wanted him in, he's been struggling this year, and I think maybe 3 or 4 days off to kind of rest and get better for the second half. I think that was the right decision. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the second half, and hopefully the Jays can do something.
and I think Ben Schulman might be returning as well. I think.
Maybe Ali. That's one of my big pet peeves, and it seems to have been worse this year than any other. It's particularly on the radio side. Ben Schulman is there, and then he's not, and he's out doing The Price is Right. So then Eric Smith fills in, or if they need someone for television, they'll pluck Ben off on the television side, and uh, I'm an old school guy. I remember back when I was a kid, years ago, the Tom and Jerry, they never took a day off. And for me, when you're an announcer, and a lot of the time when Ben Schulman is off, it's not his choice because Rogers has him doing other things like The Price is Right
Yeah,
or whatever. But when you signed up to be the announcer for a team, you were there the whole season. And you know that going in.
yeah,
So I find it annoying when they keep changing up the play-by-play people, particularly on the radio side. I like consistency.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And they can find you at producer Paulie.
That's right. Yeah, on social media, you can find me on Twitter or X, whatever their name is, at producer Paulie, and Instagram, which I'm starting to get a little bit more involved with. I'm at producer Paulie Radio.
Perfect. Well, you can find me on. I guess I'm all over the place.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, you can find me there. And you know what? We have to do this again real soon.
Yes, definitely.
Let's do it. And we'll be back